on behalf of the Center for South Asian History and Culture Studies, I warmly welcome you all to today's session. And today I am your host, Shrajaniti. And tonight we are having Dr. Nadira Khatun, Associate Professor, Xavier Institute of Management, University, Odisha. And today she is going to she's going to discuss with us about her influential book, which is called Postcolonial Bollywood and Muslim Identity. Production, representation, and reception examines how Hindi cinema reflects and shapes Muslim identity in post-colonial India. Her work connects film studies, media representation, and minority voices to critical questions of culture and politics.
Thank you so much, and good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank to each and every member of the Center for South Asian History and Culture Studies for the opportunity and so that I can talk about my book and having me at your center. And most importantly, thank you to all the people who could join today for the discussion. And I would like to shorten my talk. I will keep it within 15 minutes. So that we can get more time for discussion and to the question answer. So I will give a kind of brief introduction of my book first. By now, I think as I have spoken so many times about my book, so I would like to keep it very tight. So if we talk about Muslims in post-colonial Bollywood, that's what I started with, because before going into the book, I would like to give a kind of brief introduction why I started working on the book. So it is part of my PhD dissertation, and then I have converted that into a book. And I started my PhD dissertation in 2010. And at that time, there were hardly few literature which actually were written on Muslim representations or post-colonial Muslim identity in Bollywood cinema. So and most importantly, if you talk about post-colonial Muslim identity in Bollywood cinema, and there were two works primarily I can remember at that time which were available. One was Richard Allen and Ira Vasquez's work, Islamic Culture in Bollywood. That is one book. And the other one, there was one article which was published by Maidul Islam, and primarily on, again, Muslim representation in general. Though the book was available at that moment, the Islamic culture, the book was more of a like the cultural, Islamic cultural elements and how those are used in Bollywood cinema. So I thought of talking beyond that. It's not, I wanted to make it more political, and also because I wanted to get certain answer why those Islamic nuances and the cultural elements which are used primarily and predominantly. So that's where I started working on this particular topic. So the book covers actually 75 years of span, that immediately after independence till 2020, primarily till that time I have taken that particular time span. And when I as I'm telling that, as just now I pointed out that I did not only deconstructed the nuances of Muslim representation, but I actually tried to analyze the politics of those representation. So when we talk about politics of Muslim representation, we have to keep in mind that there are selective representations and selective portrayal of Muslims as the other through certain markers that we have seen from the early period of Bollywood or Hindi cinema till late 2020, even till now it's going on. So there are, as I'm telling that, there are certain selective markers and certain markers which are used, and selective frames which are used for representing Muslims. So I'm going to give you one example so that you can relate it more. You will be finding a lot of films which are talking about Islamic terrorism and that is overexploited genre in Bollywood cinema. But on the other hand, there are multiple communal riots, and even that started during partition in 1946, 47, and even 1990s. There are multiple, but we hardly see any kind of representation of those. So Muslims are always represented through a selective ideological lens. If we talk about the structure of the book is primarily divided into four analytical themes, though there are certain other chapters like introduction, and one chapter I have dedicated how Muslims are involved in filmmaking from early history till today. But primarily from the film text, I have come out with four different chapters. The first one is Muslim historical and Muslims in historical genre. From the chapter name is Muslim historical genre and Muslims in historical genre, from diplomat warrior to barbarian outsiders. So in this particular chapter, I have primarily looked at how if you look at early history in 1947 or immediately after independence, till that, in that particular time, till 1960s, mid 60s onwards, uh, uh, Muslims are primarily represented as Mughal rulers. So, and those are actually can be categorized as Muslim historical genre, and that categorization was done by Ira Vaskar already in the book Islamic Culture. But Muslims in historical films, that is a new phenomenon where we are seeing that Muslim rulers again, but they are not in the same glorified way they are getting represented. But if you look at 1950s and 1960s, early 60s, at that time, Muslim historical genre actually glorified Muslim Mughal rulers, and the kind of benevolent nature they had. They were excellent, efficient warrior, and they were the secular people. But now Muslims in historical genre, if we look at from that trend started from 2011 to 2000, primarily it's still going on. Then, one of the latest film, that is Chava, we have seen all. If all of us, we know about that. It talks about Aurangzeb and the kind of tyranny that person had, or that person in his ruling era, the kind of oppression which he has actually operationalized. So so there is a huge shift in representing Mughal rulers and also Muslim rulers, and now they are primarily they are getting represented as they are the enemy and who are trying to invade our nation. So here, if you talk about the kind of shift in representation, we can argue that by adopting an anti-Islamic stance, contemporary historical films in Bollywood have become a powerful weapon for fostering nationalism, because all the films, latest films, Panipat, Keshari, Tanaji, and Chava, or even Padmavat, all are talking about a kind of, they are used as a tool to propagate certain ideologies that is primarily the idea of nationalism. Now, even in that particular chapter, I have also spoken the role of gender in terms of performing the idea of nationalism. So therefore, there is one section I have kept, that is gendering the politics of Hindu nationalism through historical films. So there I have used Sikata Banerjee's The Whole Idea of Masculine Nationalism, and that I have referred to gender hierarchy, where primarily a warrior man guards a caste woman, and that's what it happened in Padmavat. And even there were certain controversies which happened during Manikarnika, the film, which where the woman and the lead protagonist, and he's actually there was one scene where it was misrepresented that he's having a kind of a relationship with a foreigner. So therefore, the whole idea of outsider and our women, they are getting mingled with. And there I argue that the responsibility of safeguarding the cultural purity of a race is assigned to the chastity of its women. So the next chapter, and that I have categorized the film of a Muslim social genre, and the name of the chapter, Muslim social genre, from exotic exclusive to ordinary inclusive. So exotic exclusive, because if you look at 1970s onwards, or 1960s, late 1960s and 70s, during that time, there are multiple films like Pakiza and Umrauzan. All are part of Muslim social genre, or Chaudhry Ka Chand. There are multiple. And even the latest in that particular genre, if we look at, then we have Der Iskya or Iskya and all. So therefore, Der Iskya, or if we talk about Iskya, those films where we are seeing that any middle class person and their hardship. And at the same time, if we talk about Chaudhry Ka Chand, it's very exotic, and the Nawabi culture we have seen mostly in those films. But again, in this particular chapter, I have primarily argued that those films also created a kind of illusion for the audience, and also for the Muslim audience, particularly for the Muslim audience, because a person who is probably fixing a bicycle, he has never experienced that kind of life. But we are finding that the person actually he is going and trying to get a glimpse, or he is getting a glimpse of the Nawabi culture all the time whenever he is seeing Muslims. So that is a kind of illusion, and that is a kind of exoticization of Muslim representation that we have seen always throughout the history of film. And then the next chapter, that is the most important chapter I find in my book, that is Muslim political genre. And in that particular, though I'm telling that era for each chapter and each genre, but the era is not very, like, it's not watertight era, because again, Muslim historical, if we look at, and historical genre, if we look at, as I started, it started in 50s, late early 50s, and it went on 60s, and still it's going on, right? Jodha Akbar was one of the latest, and it was released in 2009. So therefore, but predominantly these genre are prevalent in that particular time, or that particular period. So Muslim historical genre, it's, if we talk about, then the year or the era, we can the span of that particular genre can be 1970s, late 1970s to 19 even 2005 till 2005. So here, why this political, I have kept, or I have categorized it as Muslim political genre, because in 1979, late 1970s and 1980s onwards, we have started noticing in India the kind of, India saw the emergence of an alternative politics of minority representation. And this is because, again, the politics started coming up in a very different shape during that time, because Hindu nationalism started coming up in a more aggressive form. So because of that, we have seen that the first thing, villain characters we have started noticing, and that started with Mumbai's underworld dawn characters like Bhai, Daud, and those films, underworld dawns, related those films, they started coming out. There is another reason for that. Those underworld dawns, actually, they wanted to represent themselves in those films, because they wanted to just whitewash their image, and that's why they have funded in lot of films, and that was the initial films where we have seen Muslims, and but those films actually, though they are based on gangster life, but they were not actually the villain. They were gangsters, but at the same time they were the heroes also, because they are doing these gangster certain criminal activities to, and on the other hand they are benefiting to the downtrodden society. So that's what in 1970s, late 1970s, or at that particular period we have seen. There is another development we have noticed, that is, I have subcategorized this particular this section, the first, that ideal image of an Indian family and Hinduized nation. And this particular section, I have discussed that in 1990s onwards, there is a new type of films we started coming in. That is all Kavi Khushi Kabhi Gum, KKK films, we call it, like joint family culture, and that is those are primarily Hindu joint family cultures, and they are respecting hierarchy, they're respecting the authority, and they're having a kind of upper class, upper caste, bourgeois society, that culture which we're getting represented through these films. So, and there were certain sidekick characters, and they were Muslims. So, actually, that's where I critique that, or I argue that Hindutva philosophy portrays India as nation of Hindus. Because if you are telling that the Indian culture as the Hindu culture, that means other communities, other religious groups, or other caste, they are you are telling that them they are the other. So automatically, us versus them, it just comes in. So the next one theme, that is I have discussed, that nationalism, communal conflict, terrorism, and geopolitics. Where again, 19 initially, if we look at early 1990s onwards, we have started noticing another development, that is terrorism, and those terroristic films started coming up with Roja. Roja was the first film actually that became the floodgate of any other films, which again having the same kind of theme. But if we talk about terrorism in films, or representing terrorism in films, then also there are different categories. First, it started with terrorism in Kashmir, but after that also we have seen that after post Babri demolition, there are quite a few communal riots that we have noticed across the country, and after that there are certain terrorist attacks which actually took place. So on the basis of that, there are certain films which came up and which talked about terrorism across the country. And the third category of terrorism, which terroristic films which were representing international terrorism, because once 9/11 happened, afterwards the global terrorism, and there are a number of films which were talking about global terrorism, like New York and all, or My Name is Khan. And the last subsection of the chapter, that is Pakistan as an enemy, and that illustrates Pakistan as India's everlasting, actually, enemy. And but of course, Pakistan and India had a lot of war, and of course, the relationship was never a kind of smooth. And Pakistan is an enemy, that we can't. There is no arguing that. But at the same time, these films actually have the most problematic part of these films. They interchangeably placed Muslims, Pakistani, and enemy. That kind of intersection happened on Pakistani Muslims and terrorism. So through these, Pakistan as an enemy, so therefore a kind of there is Manisa Sethi, who has term related to Pakistan, and where the enemy image comes in. And Manisa Sethi, in her work, she has termed these as Senior patriotism. And when we talk about these interchangeably, the Muslims and Pakistani and terrorism or terrorists, which are used, that's the most problematic part I find in all these films. There are Surfaroz, Mission Kashmir, Fiza, there are multiple films which are talking about. But I find the most important part that even currently I am working on a paper, though I have missed out in the book, and though that I couldn't incorporate because that's the latest development which we are seeing in Hindi cinema. That is, it's not only out. Pakistan is an enemy. It's not anymore. Rather, and Muslims are not looked at in that way, because we have film like Kerala Files or Kashmir. Tell me, there is another film. Kerala Files, and the same director. How can I put it? Uh, okay, if I remember, I will tell you. Yeah, Kerala Files and Bengal Files, these two films, and one more film on Kashmir, the same director has come up with. And these films actually talking about not the enemy who is part of any other country. Rather, they are part of Indian subcontinent and India. Because if we talk about Kerala story, then sorry, Kerala story, Kashmir Files, and Bengal Files. Yes. So, if we talk about Kerala story, actually the people from Kerala, they are supplying women to the terrorist groups. So you are telling your own people they are the enemy and they are just doing certain harm to the country. So that is one dangerous thing, which is if we talk about Muslim representation, which is happening now. And the last segment and the last category I have discussed, that is Muslim modern genre, and from elegant to secular. So because in this particular genre, if we categorize again the span and the time frame, from 2005 onwards, we are seeing a kind of different types of Muslim representation again started coming in. So here, there are two types of, because earlier, if we have noticed that Muslim women were limited to tawaips and those kinds of character. But here, for the first time, we are seeing a character like in Gully Boy, and where Muslim women, they are having their own autonomy and they are having their own agency to perform, though she's not leaving away her religious identity. So, but though Gulliver, it's a great film in terms of, if we talk about practicing Muslim or practicing Islam at the same time, you are having the agency. But again, this particular film also through one character, they are representing the whole idea of polygamy. Um, so another important subsection I have discussed in this particular chapter, that is secular, patriotic, self-sacrificing Muslims. In multiple films we have seen in this particular section, I have discussed that from Kedarnath to Chak De India to Iqbal and Rang De Basanti. In all these films, though they are great films, they are critically acclaimed, but again, Muslims, they had to prove their nationalism, they had to redeem themselves through certain circumstances to prove their idea of nationalistic idea. So therefore, that's one particular section I have discussed. And also, I would like to point out, if it's there are certain, apart from that, you might argue that there are multiple films where Muslims are represented like without any ordinary regular Muslims, and who are not carrying any baggage, religious baggage. But those are side characters that I have kept one separate section on that, where, for example, Zindagi Milegi Nahi Dobara, there the side character, if I'm not wrong, the Kabir character he's like very regular, ordinary guy like any other person who has regular problem. Not he doesn't have any problem related to his religion. So this is in nutshell my book is all about, and I would be happy to take questions rather than one way of talking and one way of engaging.
Fantastic. Can you hear
If
me?
there is questions, please raise your hand and ask.
So, new to this. Where is my hand? There must be something. Okay, can I just say I'm raising my hand if you can hear me? Okay. Fantastic. I wish you continue. I was absolutely uh, enraptured. I have been for a while. I have heard about your book. I haven't read it. That's my fault. I have been a little caught up with a few things, but fantastic. I can't wait to get my hands on your book. In fact, I promise you after this conversation, the first thing that I put order on Amazon is your book. I really need something like this to read through and think through some of the points that you said. Just fantastic. I keep using that word because I'm literally, I mean, this is typically something that I was really looking forward to reading. I don't have too many questions as such. Maybe I'll have more when I read your book and I formulate my own ideas about it. One of the things that fascinated me, and I wanted to have you look. I have two questions. In the film Bombay, we saw two kinds of polarization. One was, if you remember, one polarization was when they were in the village and this romance takes place. And before that, everything is peaceful. This transaction is very peaceful. It's almost, you could say that there is a kind of bonhomie in it, right? But the precondition seems to be as long as you're living in silos, as long as your daughter is not marrying my son, or, kind of, you're not crossing certain boundaries, there's peace. But that is then compared by Maniratnam to the faceless violence and the nameless violence and the easy kind of the violence that comes in cities. You're Muslim, I'm Hindu. That's it. That's all that is required for us to fight and burn each other and kind of. And kind of, I felt this is my interpretation of it, and you can kind of help me think through it is that I felt that the film was all, especially with the death of their fathers, and kind of hearkening towards an earlier utopia, where the utopian setup was that we still live in silos, we still had boundaries, and that was the better, more utopian. The film treated it that way. Am I thinking um, in a direction? How would you like guide my thinking in that direction, and what are your observations? Secondly, I would be very interested. I'll quickly add a second question to it. You mentioned like three or four genres, three or four periods, Muslim critical period. Yeah. So if you could just give us all, I think, one movie that we can watch which kind of captures your argument the best for that genre. Like maybe Pakiza, for instance, I'm saying for that period of time, maybe for the social genre, some other, yeah, Muslim as so one movie that we can watch and, kind of get your argument. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking this most important question that is Bombay, because there are a lot of discussions on Bombay. You might have gone through also some of them because that's a film where there are two sides of it. Critics, one side they tell that it is actually the film which is propagating the whole idea of communal harmony. On the other hand, once one group other group talks about that no, though it talks about communal harmony, but again one particular community actually they are represented in a negative, comparatively in negative light. Because if we just close our eyes and if we imagine the fathers, both the fathers, the boy and the girl, and immediately what comes to your mind? It comes to your mind that the girl's father is more violent because he is always with a weapon and chopper and all, and he is running after someone with a chopper and some, if I'm not correctly putting across the name of that particular, yeah, weapon, but yeah. On the other hand, here the guy's father is more uh, sophisticated, and though he is also to some extent, he is not tolerant, we can't say, but he's little bit in a positive light.
Sure.
So yeah, so therefore two types of arguments we are seeing. Again, we have seen that, as you are telling, you have rightly pointed out, utopian world, because actually it does. And that, if you remember the last scene of Bombay, where they have formed a human chain from Dadar to, I think, it's a few kilometers. I don't know exactly till where to where, but the few kilometers they have created a human chain, and that actually happened during the riot after the post riot. Actually, so so that actually that creates, or that tells a lot of things, that films are not only talking about the utopian world, rather sometimes they also represent the reality. But of course, at this moment when we think, we hardly can imagine that scenario if any riot is happening, because latest the riot happened here in Katak. We hardly found as such any scene of such, right? And the second part of, if I need to suggest one film from each category, I think it would be very difficult one film from each category, because there are a lot of subsections I have spoken in every chapter and every genre. For example, if I'm talking about gendering the politics of nationalism, then I have talked about Padmavat, and because the way Love Jihad, I have connected with the whole idea of Padmavat. So therefore, and on the other hand, when I'm talking about Muslim historical genre, I have discussed Mughal-e-Azam in detail. So therefore, there are quite a few. If you get, if your library, or if you can get the book, you will be getting thousands of references for each genre. It will be very, because it's a very difficult situation if you are telling me limit every genre within one film. So it's very difficult for me, right? So yeah.
I'll just add one question. If somebody else, I may be interrupting them. I talk too much. I know that. I'm also a teacher. So so what I meant by utopia maybe was not encapsulated in the last chain, what I had in mind. I meant the utopia is that we go back to our own identities and live in silos. So we are trapped by Muslims are trapped by their own identities, the Hindus are trapped by their own identities, or whatever. So we are happy with what we have, and we don't try to transgress. It always seemed a little bit that way to me. That's what I meant. But I understand. I really appreciate I'm truly fascinated. Again, use that term. Not too much in this conversation, but I really fascinated with your arguments, and I hope to actually talk more after people have asked you.
Thanks for joining. Should I take the questions which are written on the comment section?
Yes, ma'am. You can take the question from the comment box. There is a question. What do you think about the category of good Muslim versus bad Muslim in Bollywood movie, especially in the context of Kashmir?
Yeah, actually, the whole idea of good Muslim and bad Muslim, the dichotomy between these two, and this is theorized by Mahmood Mamdani in his book. So that I have discussed in detail in the book, and primarily in Muslim modern genre. That's the last chapter, and where I have spoken about, and this primarily I have talked about the allegiance to secular. And by doing that, and the film like if you talk about film like Chak De India, then you are actually talking about a good Muslim who is nationalist and who is going ahead with the state ideology, and he is not countering and also not challenging the status quo, right? And on the other hand, as you have rightly pointed out, the films where the Kashmiri terrorism, which is actually Kashmiri terrorism is represented, or the theme of Kashmiri terrorism is taken into consideration for the representation. So those films where I have argued that when the characters they are challenging the state position, then automatically they are tagged as they are anti-national, and they're of course they're the bad Muslim. So this dichotomy is very much there. Even that particular theorization can be hugely used or utilized in Bollywood cinema as well. Hi, any more questions?
I always have questions for you. I'm sorry, but I'll just wait for somebody else if they. Okay, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Kind of, when I was listening to your talk, sorry, I think there's somebody asking a question. Maybe that person should go first.
It's fine. You can finish. You can complete. After that, I will take that question.
I think one of the very interesting points that you were mentioning is that during that entire KKK series, when I've just realized I've used KKK for Karan Johar. That's another correlation with another othering. But that series, does it, kind of, that is a little bit before the rise of Hindutva the way we see it right now. How are they kind of, is it the collapse of the what is thought to be the middle class, and by default for these filmmakers becomes the Hindu middle class? Is it the collapse of the middle class dream which they are assigning the blame to the other, be it Dalits, be it Muslims, be it foreigners, be it people coming in? Is it somewhere that we can't live that fantasy of that joint family, which is now post the liberalization, the IT economy coming in? Is that collapse of that dream, is that somehow playing into the otherization and the violence that we see?
Yeah, I have discussed those films actually from the perspective of Muslim representation, but those
Sure.
films can be discussed in taking different lens also,
Sure.
adopting different lens also, because that if you look at 1990s, early 1990s, it's very interesting era for Indian economy and Indian sociopolitics as well.
True.
So therefore, in 1990s, as liberalization happened, immediately we have noticed that huge amount of Indian people, they migrated to international land. As they migrated to international land, so when people migrate to other countries and to international countries, then they became they pretend that they are the biggest nationalist and they are the biggest patriot, because they probably they miss out their like grassroots, all the local cultural elements in their everyday living. So therefore, those films actually catered to diaspora community. At the same time, if you look at those films are shot mostly in foreign land. If they are not shooting in Indian land or in India, the context is, then at least few songs are there in the foreign land, Switzerland or somewhere. For example, Hum Saath Saath Hai. So it's a film, though the context is Indian, but there are multiple songs they have shot in some foreign land. So the people, it is catering both the types of audience, the people who have migrated to other country, diaspora community, and it's giving, it's providing them a kind of nostalgia, that Indian culture, Indian tradition, these and that. On the other hand, the people who are aspiring to migrate to foreign land as well, or the middle class aspiration, yes. So when Shah Rukh Khan in uh, DDLJ in the film and he's roaming with Kajol and such a beautiful lady, and open sunroof is there in his car, and he's just driving one wonderful car, and also in the Alps of Switzerland somewhere. So definitely they are selling some kind of aspiration to middle class people, right? So therefore, it's just providing a kind of, and it's providing two types of different types of audiences. That is one. And the whom they are catering to, again, upper middle class. And another important thing, if you look at 1990s, again, it's an era for multiplex culture. And who are going and watching those films? Again, they are the multiplex audience, not single theaters or single screen. And that time, actually, all Coolie and Angry Young Man, Amitabh Bachchan's, those films were started, the audience started rejecting those films, because again, we have a different class and different strata which were emerging during that time, because MNCs were coming in here, lot of IT companies, they are starting their startup, and they are starting their companies here. All are corporate, there were a good number of corporate people who are emerging, and new class is emerging. They are not going to watch Coolie, someone who is everyday laborer and struggling to lead their everyday living or life. So therefore, these films actually, again, these films are talking about brands, like they are the, if you talk about Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, where Shah Rukh Khan is wearing all the international brands, Gucci and all. So again, you have to understand that the audience, they are selling the aspiration middle class middle class audience, so, or upper middle class audience. So therefore, this new type of all these KKK films, which we call, they started coming in good number. Yeah, I hope I have satisfied
That was
you
a
with the
brilliant,
answer.
that was a brilliant answer. I have a lot to think about. I wish I could take notes while doing this, but yeah, I understand mainly your point, and I'm kind of reimagining the entire thing, that Hindu Puritanism at that point of time becomes a kind of a protective sheet, almost covering the core, so that the outer layers can wear Gucci, have the broad. It's almost like a protective talisman if you have. So Hindu Puritanism is almost a kind of a what do you call it, synonymous with success, with keeping your values, and I get it. That's a excellent point.
Okay, then the next question.
There is a question in the comment box. That is, what are the most significant shifts in the portrayal of Muslims in Bollywood from the early decades to the more recent era? Ma'am, you are muted. Could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. That's the whole point, actually, I have spoken and I have discussed in the book, that from early history till today, if we look at the kind of shift which gradually happened from historical era or historical genre to Muslim modern, where we are seeing that Muslim who are who are represented as modern, but again, they are liable to prove certain things. For example, film like Chak De India. So therefore, as I told in my talk, that the four distinct category we can just point out, that is Muslim historical, Muslim social, Muslim political, and Muslim modern.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think there is no more question. I can't see any more question in the comment box.
There is
Oh
one
yeah,
more.
yeah, there is one more. Do you think the portrayal of Muslims in Bollywood inspired the other industries of India like Kolkata, Tamil, etc.?
Yeah, Tamil, I don't think so that much influenced by Bollywood. Rather, at this moment, South Indian films, Tamil cinema is influencing and has huge amount of impact on Bollywood cinema. But on the other hand, um, Bollywood films are having quite a few influences on Bengali cinema, primarily, predominantly in West Bengal's film industry in West Bengal. Because the kind of elements in terms of negative image or Muslims as enemy in multiple films we have seen, and the similar type of representation we are seeing also in, unfortunately, in Bengali cinema, like terrorism and gangster and stereotypical way of representing terrorist, the way Bollywood cinema represents. And I have written one article on that, interrogating new identity of new Muslim identity in Bengali films, particularly three films I have discussed in that paper. If you want, I will just send across the reference link for the paper. Okay, on Taj Mahal, if I'm not wrong, right? Because there is one question that I have a question, but it is about one of upcoming films.
No, ma'am, it's actually a Bengali film named Roktobij 2, which will try
Oh,
to
okay.
portray the deposed Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And it has attracted a very large amount of attention in Bangladesh, and they are trying to portray the complex relationship of Awami League and that then probably he was a central minister, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. He later became the president of India. They
Mm.
had a complex relationship at the early 2010s. So the film will be based on that scenario. So
Okay.
what do you think about making such type of movie that is purely not on based of otherization process, but they are just to poke one of their neighbors? Like, how do you perceive? What is the like? I know that some of the films are based on based only for otherization, but this is not that type of film. I know it is upcoming film, and I should not question about this before before the release, but it has garnered a lot of attention in Bangladesh. So I am actually asking about this one.
Thanks for asking. It's interesting. Yeah. If I remember correctly, I think the film is already released during Durga Puja. Though I did not get the opportunity to watch the film because I stay outside West Bengal, and the film was released primarily in West Bengal. If I'm not wrong, if they have released it nationwide, but not in Bhubaneswar, where I stay in Odisha. So therefore, I did not get the opportunity to watch the film. But again, we have to, from generic film studies perspective, if I look at this film, because Rock the Beach 1 was a film which was not political that much. But as I'm hearing you, even I saw the trailer of the film, that film is actually talking about equation of India and Bangladesh. And I don't know in which light they have represented the equation India and Bangladesh, but uh, if it is in negative light, then we have to understand that also whether India and Bangladesh are having politically, or if we talk about international policies and international relations, whether both the countries are in good terms or not. Because if we talk about even international films, Hollywood has always represented Russia as the enemy, and later on China. So therefore, what kind of relation the both the countries are having that would be automatically getting reflected on screen. So it always happens internationally, even if it is happening now in on Bengali film screen. That's actually that has always been. It's nothing new.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
You can ask me if you have any question. You can ask me. Yeah.
There is no question left in the comment box. So,
Yes.
the audience, if you have any more further question, you can ask.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, please.
Uh, is there any specific reason to portray Shia Muslims in Bollywood? I mean, I don't want to ignite any sectarian problems. I curiously asking it.
If I understood your question correctly, you are trying to say that there is one particular sect of Muslims Bollywood is representing, and why they are getting
Yes,
represented.
and
Uh,
it's specifically representing.
Shia Muslim, right?
Yes, yes.
But is it predominant that Shia Muslims representation is there? I don't know. Any film? Do you remember or recall any scene from any film?
Ma'am, I can recall a specific Tajia missile. I don't know whether it's in my language. It is called Tajia missile. It was portrayed in rice. There was a
Okay, okay.
there
Is
was a
there
So
any
scene.
political connection with Iran or etc.?
Uh, I think it's not predominant, though there are, as you have pointed out, Rice, but there are very few because that's the whole point, and that's the whole argument of the book that Muslims are represented in such a narrow framework or narrow lens that there are very few diversities, even if you are representing Muslims, because Muslims are represented within just certain within certain tick marks or certain uh, lens. For example, they are North Indian. They are even the caste issue was never getting represented through Bollywood film, and different sects for that matter, and also the working class Muslims were never getting such space in Bollywood cinema. So therefore, and either they are exoticized, or they are the patriot and they're the nationalist, or they are the terrorist, or they are probably Mughal rulers. Through that, they are trying to exoticize this whole idea or the whole issue. I really doubt that Muslim representation, Bollywood has ever encouraged the diversity in representing Muslims. So and that is I don't I don't have probably the correct answer that whether Sia, but because there are hardly probably will be you can point out that they are emphasizing on on one particular sect, and if they are emphasizing, that is that just now you have pointed out that also the identity of one particular sect, it's that is not a problem. The problem is the whole Muslim identity itself.
Yes, that's right. I just curious that is there any specific reason or not? I got
I
my
don't
answer.
think
Thank
so.
you very much.
I don't think so, because I have spoken to multiple filmmakers that no one has pointed out on that. Yeah. Even for that matter, if you look at the regional identities are so much missed in Bollywood on Bollywood screen. because Bengali, one Bengali Muslim or one Kerala Muslim, they are completely different. Or North Indian Lucknowi Muslim, it's they're very different. But we are hardly seeing any such those diversities on Bollywood screen. So yeah, I hardly believe that that is the reason.
Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
I was wondering, since you were mentioning the tropes of otherization, one being ruler, the patriarch, and all of that, what are the tropes for women, Muslim women? Um, or it's just a kind of a monolith there?
Not much.
Mm.
The last week I had I was invited for one podcast, and the host and she's operating from Singapore, and she's doing great, and she has invited great scholars in her podcast. And she asked, and as she's again um woman podcaster and Muslim again, so these intersections are there, and she's keen to understand that why Muslim women representations are not that much there. So, as you have also pointed out, earlier Muslim women were reduced to tawaif, and as I pointed out in Muslim social genre that I have discussed, and they didn't have any other identity apart from tawaif or the Mughal ruler's wife. For example, in Mughal-e-Azam, Jodha Bai is there. So after that, um, then they are the aid for terrorists. Probably they are playing some sister, for example, Fiza. She's the sister and who is concerned about her brother and that kind of representation. Though she's very independent at the same time, but um, later on, it's not the same anymore. Now we are having actually Muslim women characters, and they are again the most unfortunate thing, the recent development, that is they are the most oppressive, and they need some kind of they need a savior who can come and save them. And the whole idea of triple talaq, and the government is coming up with the amendments and all, and you are representing Muslim women, they are the bicharis, and they need some kind of savior, and who can come, and that savior can should be from the majoritarian community. For example, if you talk about a film like Secret Superstar, so again, Amir Khan, who is playing that savior role. Again, if you talk about Gully Boy, though it's a film, it's very good film. Actually, we should be celebrating because there are a lot of things this film actually talks about. But here, Gully Boy, again, who is the savior? Again, someone from outside. Again, a film like Mulk, the film, that the family is actually too much harassed because the guy and the son is terrorist. But again, who is saving that family? The daughter-in-law who is belonging to majoritarian community. So that kind of, again, it's in terms of, again, Muslim women in the recent films, or even in the recent, in general films also, the savior always coming from the majoritarian community. And it's not limited to only Muslim representation. If you look at, actually, that is even applied to Dalit representation as well. If you talk about Jaivim, who is coming and saving that tribal people and the community, or Article 15. So that's a common trait which we are noticing everywhere. So that is another important thing, which is the recent development. Or for example, lipstick under my burqa. So it's a too much Brahmanical gaze which is utilized in the entire film to represent age or aging women, or to represent Muslim women. All it's like top-down gaze, which is very much utilized in the film. So I find it's more of a like women. I hardly find any independent, strong, who has her own agency in any of the recent films. apart from Gully Boy, though Gully Boy has a lot of problems, polygamy at the same time they are representing, but actually her character, again, Alia Bhatt's character, she has that agency. At the same time, Darling, if you look at Darling, again, it's a film, though it's talking at the end, towards the end, she is coming up with the guts and the courage and trying, and she's killing because he wants to escape that torture. And but again, she is the victim of the domestic violence, right? So that kind of latest development in representation Muslim women we are seeing, that is unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, ma'am. I think there is no more question.
I think you're muted.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask to the audience that do you guys watch Bollywood films?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. You have mentioned several movie names, and I have watched some of the movies. So, from your discussion, if I tell about my thought, actually, I watch movies for relaxation. So, after your discussion, I'm feeling that I should watch movies more critically. So, if I ask a question to you, that is, you have mentioned some of the films like Chaudhry Ka Chand, Omrao Jan, Padmavat. So between these films, I have watched. You have also mentioned about Jodha Akbar, Secret Superstar. Yeah. So between these movies, I have watched Omrao Jan, then Secret Superstar, uh, DDLJ, this sort of movies. So, if I specifically today in our discussion we are talking about Muslim characters or representation. So, my my interest, my curiosity is, what do you think, ma'am? When a movie is made, how does the filmmakers maintains the historical accuracy while representing a Muslim character? So, suppose in the movie like Umrao Jan, so in this movie we see uh, Muslim characters. So, as uh, you are a critic, so what do you think in these movies the characters are properly maintained, or the Muslim history and culture are properly uh, what will I say, showcased? What do you think? What is your thought about this?
Yeah, that's very interesting because that is we that we should be talking this question, we should be talking or discussing at this moment more, because there are quite a few films which are getting made at this moment in Bollywood film industry. Those are um uh, they are getting represented as it is there, the historical film, but they are mythological films. For example, films like Adi Purush or Ram Setu, or there are quite a few films which are coming out at this moment. I'm finalizing one paper at this moment, and on that how whether films are talking about historical accuracies or they are just taking the creative liberty, and they are just mixing these two. They are mythologizing the entire history. So yeah, if we believe they are representing fact, whenever they are representing history, I find that's a kind of uh, mistake that we are doing, because if we talk about Muslim historical film, even there, Anarkali's character, Mughal Azam, if you have watched the film, the Anarkali is the very famous character. And later on, there are multiple films where you will be finding again the character of Anarkali. And that's a kind of there was no character as such in Mughal court where Anarkali was there. Actually, it's completely an imaginative character, because while I was interviewing Javed Akhtar, he pointed out that. So therefore, but the whole Mughal Azam was based on the whole existence of Anarkali, and we felt like it is again Mughal ruler and the life of Mughal ruler, but that never happened in Mughal court. So therefore, if we are believing that if any historical film or any mythological film, they are claiming that they're again mixture of history and mythology, then I think we need to critically evaluate. We also need to re-examine the historical fact.
I understand. Thank you so much, ma'am.